Hello, my friends, and welcome to the show that is going to bring a whole lot of personality today. Literally. We've dedicated the entire hour to learning about our personality types and what it means for living our best lives. Now, when I initially heard of the idea of taking a personality test, I was skeptical. Like, how can answering a bunch of random questions reveal the real me? Well, I tried the Meyers-Briggs test with some of the best in the business, and y'all, I was shook. It was so accurate, it was almost scary. And I think that's the thing that most people get hung up on, is the fear of learning something they don't want to, A, and the fear of being branded with a label. But what I've learned through all this, and what we hope you'll learn today, is that personality typing can show your strengths as well as weaknesses, which teach us how to be more successful in life, business, and love. As a matter of fact, I made my husband Chris sit down with me and figure out our love languages, and let me tell you, that was eye-opening, and we're gonna have that later too. And I think about the people in my life, and I realize it takes all types of people to make the world go round. If we all thought and felt the same way, society would A, be boring, and B, unable to function. So as we go forward through the show, remember that there is no bad or good in personality exploration. It's all about learning. Also, throughout the show, we're going to have some amazing resources for you to check out for your own personality type, so get ready to take some notes. But don't worry, you won't be graded on these tests. Our first guests are typology experts Joel Mark Witt and Antonia Dodge. Joel and Antonia have a popular book and podcast series called Personality Hackers. They believe that knowing how you're wired can help you gain a greater sense of your strengths and help you better navigate the world around you.
My first introduction into personality typing was through the two of you. I really didn't know much about it before you. So I'm curious to know, what was the starting point for each of you, and how did you get into personality typing?
We were both introduced when we were young and took to it immediately. It's one of those things that it helps explain a lot of mysteries, particularly about oneself and then relationships with other people. But the reason, sort of the etymology of how we got to where we're at, is we both wanted to use it primarily for personal growth. And this, particularly Myers-Briggs, of all the personality type systems, Myers-Briggs in particular has been used primarily for careers and for career placement, or a lot of people hear about it in college. And it's more about helping you kind of figure out that track. But we also knew that it was powerful for growth and development because its roots are Carl Jung, who used it for psychotherapy and came up with it for that purpose. And so we always wanted to use it in that application, and we found so many powerful ways to use it for personal growth, but there weren't a lot of resources for that application.
Well, what I love about it too is that, like, you're at a family, like a Thanksgiving dinner, right? And you're like, Uncle Bob is driving me crazy. He's dumb. He's stupid. He doesn't have the right way to see it. And I think what happens when you understand personality type is you go, wait a second.
Yeah.
Maybe Uncle Bob isn't trying to hurt me. Maybe he's not trying to be a jerk. Maybe Uncle Bob is just wired very differently than me. Maybe he just learns information and makes decisions different than I do. Oh, now I can start to think in terms of, how can I relate to Uncle Bob or whoever in your life, right? Friends, family, coworkers. How can I relate to them on their terms, how they show up and how I show up? It gives a language too, to be able to share with people and understand where people are coming from, which is really powerful too.
I love that. That actually got to the heart of one of the things I was thinking about with the work that you do, is how we can better understand each other through this, which I think is really going to be key in moving forward and in healing so many things. Now, for those who aren't familiar, because you mentioned this, can you kind of explain what the Myers-Briggs system is?
It's a system that is intended to help a person understand what their preferences are for engaging with the world, for taking in information and making decisions or evaluating that information. And so it's got actually two tiers. It's got a top tier, which is relatively simple, and that's what most people are familiar with. That's what they learn when they take an assessment and then come out a certain type with 4 letters. And that gives you some preferences on how you want to engage with the world, and gives you a decent amount of information. But the second tier is a much deeper place, and that is a space of what's technically called cognitive functions. And that helps you access basically the operating system of your mind. So that top tier gives you an introversion, extroversion, sensing, intuition, which is basically the kind of information that captures your attention, thinking, feeling, which is how you're going to make decisions based on that information, and then a judging and perceiving style, which is where you like your freedom and where you like your organization.
We all do two primary things. We learn information, we make decisions, right? And that's pretty much the easiest way to look at it is how are you learning information in your world? How are you taking things in? And then how are you making decisions on that information? And when you know your personality type, you basically know those two pieces of information. You can live your life as your best self.
Can your personality change over time? Is this something that you're born this way with these letters, or can it evolve as we go?
Well, the word evolve is a good word because our view is that your personality is your wiring, right? The wiring of your mind, how you're that learning information, how you're making decisions is something that we believe you come pre-wired with. But there are elements of your personality that can grow over time. So as you mature as a person, just like a small child might have elements of their personality haven't been fully rounded out yet. As they get older, as they go into maturity and they have life experiences, other parts of ourselves are activated. So it can look like your personality is changing over time, even though what we see is that people are actually developing themselves. They're rounding out themselves more. It's not just changing.
Right. And there's a difference between personality type and personality traits.
Yes.
Traits change over time. Our personality traits definitely evolve and change over time. The personality type itself, that is sort of that operating system. That operating system stays the same, but we put on, basically see it as the operating system stays the same, but we put different apps on it as we, and download different forms of software as we age and grow.
Interesting. So is there a next level in hacking our personality?
For sure. After you discover your best fit type, those 4-letter combinations, again, that will give you a ton of information about just things like your preferences, like knowing you're an extrovert will make sure that you give yourself enough permission to go be extroverted. Now, in this world, it's usually the introverts that need permission. And so just knowing that piece of information can sometimes be a game changer for a person. They'll go, oh, I'm an introvert. That's why I need more alone time. And then they give themselves permission to have that. A lot of things that come from just understanding that top layer around permission. You learn that the way that you're wired is valid, right? It's okay to be wired the way that you are, particularly if you're wired differently than maybe the family you grew up in or the people around you.
Oh, yeah.
It just gives you the sense of like, okay, so I'm not completely crazy or I'm not seeing things sideways. Like I have permission to be myself and I have permission to tailor my world to how I'm wired. So a lot of great material comes from that.
And I was actually lucky enough to get a personal profiling session from the hackers. We're going to dive into how I'm wired and how you can dip your toe into these waters after the break. And then welcome back to New Day. Have you ever heard someone describe themselves as an ENFJ or an ISTP and wondered what do those cryptic letters mean? Well, Joel Mark Witt and Antonia Dodge have used Meyers-Briggs typing in their personal growth coaching for years. They demonstrated what those letters mean for me.
So Amity, we did a profiling session not that long ago. So I'll use you as an example.
Okay.
In our discovery together of your best fit, what's called your best fit type, you had ESFP preferences. So E would stand for extrovert, which is, it's not really about whether or not you're social. It's more about which world you go to for your energy, for sort of a feeling of aliveness. And for you, it's the outer world. It's the world outside of yourself that engages and fascinates you. And that's the world of energy.
Probably doesn't surprise you though, right?
Well, that's the thing that's so crazy about it. Is it's just like, I'm like, do you know me? You're seeing my soul. It's amazing.
The other option would be introvert. And there's been a real introvert revolution in the recent times where people are starting to really understand what introversion is, which is not being antisocial, just like extrovert isn't necessarily being social, but that's more about a preference for going inside of your mind and sort of checking in with what resonates with you internally before you enter the outside world or engage with the outside world. The second letter is for you is S for sensory. The other option would be N for intuitive. For you as a sensor, you understand best by engaging with your environment. You learn by doing. You're very experiential. You're very like in the moment. You have kind of a monkey see, monkey do way of going about things, which is that if you can observe somebody doing something and then you can jump in and start replicating what they're doing quickly and you pick things up like that. The other option would be intuitive, and intuitive preferences are people who think more in terms of sort of abstractions and theories. They're behind the curtain thinkers, which basically means that you can never directly see what's going on behind a curtain because it's behind a curtain. So you have to start patterning. You have to kind of make guesses, and intuitives prefer that style. You also had feeling preferences. You were F for feeler. The other option would be T for thinker. As a feeler, you're more tapped into sort of the human components, particularly how you're feeling, the things that resonate with you. How are things making you feel? Does that feel right or wrong? Is that in alignment with my values and how I see myself and how I want to show up? And the other option would be thinker, which is more around metrics. Humans are one node, one component, but there's a lot of other components too for thinkers. And then perceivers are people who like to have their options open, like to have freedom in the outside world, right? They tend to push things kind of to the 11th hour a little bit because they're good at pulling rabbits out of hats, right? And they like the spontaneity of life. They like to be able to have freedom in the outside world of movement. The other option is a J for judger, and they're the kind that prefer to have things a little bit more organized, a little bit more locked down. They prefer to plan. They feel like they work best when they can have a plan and really work that plan over time, whereas perceivers are better when they're just kind of doing things incidentally and in the moment.
I mean, I am blown away by the fact that you actually could see into my soul. One of the many things I got from our session was more compassion for myself, which is something that I did not expect to come out of this, and made me feel, for some reason, and I don't know why this is the word that comes to mind, legitimized in my own mind. Do you find that a lot, that these kind of personality typing sessions help people just kind of know themselves better, not just on the surface, but deep inside?
I would say that's one of the best things that come from all of these consultations and from these sessions is it is incredibly validating, right? There are 16 different personality type combinations we can come out as, and none of them are more than 10% of the population. So you run into 100 people and it's like only a small percentage of them are going to be like you. And so we don't always find those people. So having a system that goes, okay, this is how your mind is wired, and this is what you're looking at, and this is how you're operating. And knowing that that this has been studied for over 100 years, this has been patterned, and that it is in fact, it's not just a valid way of going about the world, it's actually necessary. Our opinion is that all of these types are part of like a social ecosystem, and all of us show up with something that is really important for the world to have and experience. And we're told to be in certain ways, like, no, do it like this. No, you should be more like this. Yeah. And that's actually a very small percentage of personalities that get validated in that way. And all the other ones, the ones that are like maybe more free form, more spontaneous, more go with what feels right to them and what's in alignment, those types are not always as validated. So when they hear that, no, it's not just valid, it's important, you need to be showing up with your gifts, the world needs it, then that's usually a moment when we sort of rest into ourselves, feel very vindicated sometimes, for our style. And also it encourages us to bring those gifts forward and to stop hiding them.
And I really I've spoken to so many people about what a wonderful and wild experience this has been. And I'd like just for everyone else to understand, like, what is the best way for someone to dip their toes in the water? They're not as lucky as me that I got to meet you both, but they just want to dip their toe in the water and figure this out.
Personality Hacker, the book, talks about the system and sort of how to figure out those two different layers. It also talks about some phenomena that people might find themselves in based on their personality type. That's things that might feel like getting stuck and getting unstuck from that. Yeah. We also have a podcast we've been doing since January of 2014. Oh. So we have hundreds of episodes every week. And that's a really great place if you're an auditory learner. And if you go to personalityhacker.com, we also have articles and other resources.
That's great. I really thank you. And in the words of my producer, Rebecca, this whole thing has kind of given us all permission to be ourselves. So thank you both for your time, for sharing this with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Amity.
And the Personality Hacker website has a free personality test that you can take. There's also a detailed test in the Personality Hacker book, which includes in-depth descriptions of the 16 different personality types. And we have a link to that on our website.